What Pod people, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good. It's an interesting time of year. How about you?
I'm also doing well. So I want to take a minute to talk about our holiday schedule.
Oh, yeah.
I know that a lot of podcasts take time off during December and January for the holidays. And so I just want to say that right now our current plan is that we are not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're pretty sure we can keep going with our regular Tuesday schedule all throughout the holidays without missing any time. So even though both Christmas Day and New Year's Day land on a Tuesday,
Yay,
we're still going to have our podcast out. So just so you know, if anything changes, we'll keep you guys updated. But as far as things stand right now, we should just keep on our regular Tuesday schedule. And at that rate, we should be done with the Eye of the World somewhere in the middle of January.
Wow, already?
I know, isn't that crazy? But yeah, that's the plan. So like I said, if anything changes, we will let you know. But currently, our plan is to just keep going with our regular Tuesday updates and not take any time off for the holidays. Although when we are finished with the Eye of the World, I think we're going to take a week off. But we will figure that out when we get closer to the end.
Yeah.
All right. Also, before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread.
Ah, yes.
So there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we'll be discussing chapters 39 and 40, where Rand gets caught up in some serious tavern twisting, and we meet the royal family.
Wow.
Let's start with chapter 39, which is called The Weaving of the Web, and the icon is the Lion of Andor.
All right. Here's a quick summary of chapter 39 to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Rand looks down on the city from the window of his room, excited about seeing the false dragon. Matt is in full dagger mode and is more withdrawn and sullen than he's been thus far. Rand is worried about him and wonders if he should get help from Caemlyn's version of a wisdom. But Matt isn't really sick, and Rand gives up on him. Rand is ready to leave the inn when Master Gil tells him that someone's been asking about him and his friends in the city, and they are interested in the boys specifically. Rand asks who it is, and Gil says that it's a half-mad beggar, and to be careful out there. Rand is also warned that a number of men wearing the white far outnumber the ones wearing red. He has learned that the red means support for Morghese, while the white means the dissenters. The mood in the city is on edge, and the crowd is belligerent, knocking people over, even white cloaks and the Queen's guards. Rand makes his way to the inner city, hoping to get a good vantage point to catch a glimpse of Logain. Using his height as an advantage, he finds a pretty good spot until he notices people clearing the way for a filthy beggar whose face is hidden by a cowl. The beggar suddenly shrieks and points straight at Rand and begins struggling to get to him through the crowd. Rand takes off in the opposite direction, not knowing if the beggar is a dark friend and not anxious to find out. He gets away, but is kind of lost, and he's still determined to see the false dragon. He notices he's next to a high wall and decides to climb it to see if he can get a view from up top. Once on the wall, he gets a clear line of sight to see the procession. Logain is being kept in an iron cage loaded onto a massive wagon surrounded by soldiers and warders and 8 Aes Sedai. Rand is fascinated with Logain and notes that even in a cage, he carries himself like a king, and where his gaze falls, people go silent. The crowd redoubles their hate and fear, howling at him, and Logain responds by throwing back his head and laughing. Rand realizes that even in a cage, Logain had not been defeated. He wonders aloud to himself why the Aes Sedai are watching him like that, and a girl's voice replies, "They're keeping him from touching the true source, silly." Rand jerks in surprise, loses his balance, and falls inside the wall. Dun dun dun!
Rand has almost reached the end of his patience with Matt. Like, he really wants to go out into the city with Matt, but he's kind of done with his attitude, and, he needs a break.
Yeah. Matt is not okay.
No,
he hasn't gotten out of bed. He hasn't taken a bath. Like, Rand's bringing him all his meals. He's completely isolated and angry. He calls Loyal a Trolloc.
Right? Yeah.
But, like, he isn't sick, but he's completely succumbed to the evil of the dagger.
Yeah.
So Rand thinks about getting Matt medical help, but he's not sure if it's a good idea. And the book says herbalists and hedge doctors were lying low in Camelin right now. There was talk against anyone who did any kind of healing or fortune telling. So the attitude in the city is to cry dark friend and like scowl the dragon's fang.
Yeah.
And this is because of White Cloak influence, because they're running around the city, stirring up trouble like they do. And just the general mood towards Aes Sedai is pretty bad. So even though it's completely well established that there are healers and herbalists that have nothing to do with the power, people are still...
Ooh.
It's sketchy.
It's weird because, you know, like, I guess we would call them pre-industrial societies. Like, there's very much that suspicion of people who can heal anyway. But it's just weird that that's in such a place like Camelin. So it has to be spurred on by the White Cloaks. Yeah,
it definitely is. I mean, we already know that the White Cloaks were making a beeline for Camelin, and specifically to stir up trouble.
Yeah.
You know? Like, but it's just what they do. It's their raison d'etre.
I love that phrase.
Me too.
Guild lets Rand know that a beggar's been looking for him, and we find out that Camelin has a standing policy of taking care of the poor and making sure that they have food from the queen's bounties so that there's no need for them to beg.
Yeah.
Which is why there being a beggar is such a weird thing. When you start to compare Camelin to other cities that we're going to encounter in this world, it really does parallel Camelot from King Arthur Legends. Well, with the exception that there's a queen.
Right. Yeah, Camelin really is supposed to be kind of the epitome of you know, this grand city and where everything is right and just and wonderful. It's just kind of a shitty time.
Yeah, it is.
You know, right now.
Well, and that, not to drag it out too much, but even though the King Arthur Legends, like, Camelot's this idea, but when we get into the story, at the time of the story, Camelot's not such a good place many other times either. So it's an interesting parallel.
Yeah. So we meet Lamgwin, which is one of Gil's guards. I did not expect to have to remember him. Like,
totally, yeah.
The first time through, like, I was really surprised when he comes back into the story. And so Jordan does this thing. He has this conservation of characters that he does.
Yeah,
where these throwaway characters come back. Like, it happens with Elsa Grinwell and Master Gil and Lamgwin and just a number of other characters. And I just think it's ironic considering the sheer number of characters that appear in this series. I mean, there's so many. And it's funny that he would be economical with characters in this way.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of funny. But I especially like Gil and other ones that hang around too. So I'm absolutely fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of what makes this part of the Eye of the World so interesting for me is the way that Jordan sets up the world Rand is just kind of thrust into.
Okay.
Like, Rand is going out into the city and it's a powder keg ready to go off.
Yeah.
Like, there are armed strongmen protecting the inn, and they know that the White Cockade dissenters are watching the inn from across the street to see who comes and goes. However, in the middle of all this tension, Rand still wants to go out because it's a dream come true to be in the big city.
Right.
Like, the idea of getting to see a false dragon and maybe even a queen is too much for him to pass up.
Right.
So we get the sense of his wonderment and the sense of the tension that surrounds him all wrapped up in one. Maybe it's because I come from a small town, but early Rand's experience of going out into the big wide world just kind of resonates with me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the streets are teeming with people who are rowdy and belligerent. And crowds of this size, no matter what they're for, are dangerous.
Yeah.
That many people jammed close together is a hazard. And even the White Cloaks are being pushed around. And Rand has this thought. Men were doing things of which they had never before thought. Jostling a White Cloak today tomorrow, perhaps pulling down a queen.
Yeah.
It's really easy to get sucked into a mob mentality because with that many people, there's a certain amount of anonymity. Mm-hmm. And so you get spurred on by the emotions of the people around you. And it's very easy to get carried away into doing things you would never do otherwise. And that's one of the reasons why mobs are so dangerous. It's this like feedback circle of craziness.
Yeah. Mobs are really scary. Mm-hmm. So the elephant in the room is that the people wearing white are opposed to the Aes Sedai meddling with things that, in their opinion, are mucking up the world. But the Aes Sedai are also the only ones who can handle a man that can channel. The dissenters still want to see the false dragon dealt with, even if it has to be done by the Aes Sedai. But they don't want the Aes Sedai around because they meddle with things. It's just a really odd stance to take. And then finally, in the midst of all this, Rand realizes how precarious the political situation is. It's kind of horrifying to realize the crowd that you stand in could go either way in a conflict. If the right words are spoken, 1 second they're going to be cheering, the next they could be brawling.
So we find out later on that the beggar is Padden Fane. And this scene specifically, but also later in Faldara, is why I say that Min's vision of the beggar staff back in chapter 15 is definitely about Fane.
Right. Go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already.
Yeah. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, definitely it's about Fane. But anyway, that's just my opinion, whatever. So Rand is lost after running for the beggar and determined to see the false dragon. So he's trying to find a good vantage point, and there's just a lot of random chance involved in finding the hilltop wall and deciding to climb it.
Yep.
And random chance is where the Tavren pulling really comes into play. You know, like we see this specifically with Matt and his luck.
Right.
But it's true with the other boys as well. Like whenever there's a lot of random chance or just kind of dumb luck, that's really when the Tavern starts to rev up.
Right. Because random chances where the wheel gets a chance to actually weave.
Yeah. The pattern gets to play.
So Rand sees the palace wall and is all like, challenge accepted. He climbs it even though he gets cut up pretty bad and his pants get torn just on the way up. It's like, obviously, this wall wasn't meant to be climbed or something. Take the hint, Rand.
Right?
Yeah. But he gets a great view, and I love the description we get from Logan as he's sitting on top of the wall.
Yeah. So let's talk about this section of seeing the false dragon. Okay, first, I don't know. We probably haven't, we haven't seen it yet, but we will see in the future that it takes 6 Aes Sedai to maintain the shield on Logan, but there are 8. So I assume the other 2 are there to like physically restrain him with bonds of air or something.
Or redundancy.
Maybe. Like, what do you think? Like, why do you think there's 8?
Well, I think there's 8 because Aes Sedai can't do anything small. But I think there's 8 there just so that they have some kind of a backup. If a sister falls ill, if something goes wrong,
that makes sense.
They got 2 in reserve. Mm-hmm. But I also like your idea that maybe the 6 are focused on actual shielding him from the source, and the other 2 can keep him bound with air. That also makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
because the only reason it caught my attention is because we'll see later on, usually when it comes to holding a shield, whether it's the Black Oz or Dark Friends or whatever, it's always a circle of 6. Like they repeat that number over and over again. So because this was 8, I was like, well, what are the other 2 for? It could be it's the first book.
It could very well be one of those first book things.
All right. Okay, so I just want to read Rand's description of Logain because I loved it. I loved it so much, and I just want to read it.
Go for it.
Indulge me. All right. With all that, it was the man in the cage who caught and held Rand's eyes. He was not close enough to see Logain's face as he had wanted to, but suddenly he thought he was close as he cared for. The false dragon was a tall man, with long, dark hair curling around his broad shoulders. He held himself upright against the sway of the wagon with one hand on the bars over his head. His clothes seemed ordinary, a cloak and a coat and breeches that would not have caused comment in any farming village. But the way he wore them, the way he held himself, Logain was a king in every inch of him. The cage might as well not have been there. He held himself erect, head high, and looked over the crowd as if they had come to do him honor. And wherever his gaze swept, there the people fell silent, staring back in awe. When Logain's eyes left them, they screamed with redoubled fury as if to make up for their silence, but it made no difference in the way the man stood or in the silence that passed along with him. As the wagon rolled through the palace gates, he turned to look back at the assembled masses. They howled at him beyond words, a wave of sheer animal hate and fear, and Logain threw back his head and laughed as the palace swallowed him. So that's pretty badass.
Yeah, like, dude's got some serious cojones.
Yeah. Okay, so the laughing part. Later, we find out this in Lord of Chaos. It's chapter 30, and it's when Nynaeve heals him.
Yeah.
Logain says, I saw a man once who will cause more trouble than I ever did. Maybe it was the Dragon Reborn. I don't know. It was when they took me through Camelin after I was captured. He was far away, but I saw a glow, and I knew he'd shake the world. Caged as I was, I couldn't help laughing. So basically, he has the talent of seeing Ta'veren.
Yeah.
And because Rand is so strongly Ta'veren, he sees this like beacon, and he can't help but laugh at here he is in a cage. Everyone thinks he's this huge danger, and then over there yonder, there's a person who's going to destroy the world.
Right over there. Yeah.
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 I just think that's really cool.
I also think it's great that his response to that was the laugh.
Well, I mean, what are you going to do in that situation,
Well, true. I guess you could cry, but yeah.
It's not his style.
Not his. And then Rand falls backwards off of the wall into the palace after being taken by surprise by a girl's voice. Smooth, Rand. Well done, dude.
Yep.
And that brings us to the end of chapter 39. Before we get to chapter 40, here's a quick word from our sponsors.
Today's episode of the Wheel of Time Podthru is brought to you by garden walls. Always present and rarely guarded, garden walls are a good way to get into places where you don't belong. Climb on over where mystery and adventure await. You may uncover a dastardly plot, get thrown into prison, or maybe even meet the mother of your children. Garden walls. You never know what's on the other side.
Chapter 40 is called The Web Titans, and the icon is the Flame of Tar-Valon.
Rand regains consciousness to find himself inside the garden wall. The girl who spoke to him is climbing down from a nearby tree, followed by a boy who looks like her brother. Rand is concerned by how finely dressed they both are, thinking that they must be important and that he's landed himself in big trouble because this is obviously not a public park. He is not so panicked, however, that he doesn't still notice how beautiful she is. The boy, Gawain, tells the girl, Elaine, that they'll get in trouble with their mother for this, but she's more concerned about whether or not Rand is hurt. Rand wants to head back over the wall, but he can't stand up straight, and they realize that he is hurt. Elaine pulls out vials and packets of medicine to treat Rand's wounds, and Gawain explains that she is always tending to strays. Through conversation, Rand discovers that Elaine is the daughter heir of Andor and that their mother is Queen Morghese herself. Rand panics, really wanting to escape now, and Elaine is surprised that he really didn't know where he was. Gawain asks for his name, and without thinking, he tells the truth, adding that he's from the Two Rivers. Rand notices that Gawain looks surprised at this. They talk a little more until they're interrupted by the handsomest young man Rand had ever seen. He eyes Rand warily and demands that Elaine and Gawain step away from him, but Elaine refuses, telling him that Rand is under her protection. She tells him off, and he leaves. Elaine and Gawain explain that he is Galad, their half-brother, and Elaine says that she hates him because he always does the right thing no matter who it hurts. Elaine tells Rand that they must get him out of there quickly, but they are too late, and armed guards rush up and surround Rand. Gowan and Elaine immediately jump in front of him, and Elaine claims guest right for him. She has an argument with Talonvar, the very determined head of the guards, who refuses to back down. Another guard brings a message that the queen commands that all three of them be brought directly to her. During the long walk through the palace, Elaine and Gowan try to give Rand pointers. They arrive at the hall where Margase awaits them, and Elaine refuses to let Talonvar take Rand's sword, again claiming guest right. They enter, and Rand, not knowing how to act, copies Gowan, which angers Talonvar. Rand gets his first glimpse of Margase, flanked by Gareth Bryan on one side and Elida knitting on the other. His first thought is of how beautiful she is. Margase commands them to rise and tells off Elaine for sneaking out to look at Logain against her wishes, and Gowan for not keeping Elaine in check. Margase turns her attention to Rand, and Elaine paints a picture of Rand as a loyal citizen of Andor. But Margase says that she doubts anyone in the Two Rivers even realizes that they are part of Andor, and Rand's expression confirms this. Elida puts down her knitting and examines Rand, saying that he does not have the look of the Two Rivers. Rand explains that his mother was an Outlander, but his father was a Two River shepherd. Elida drops the bomb that he has a heron-marked sword, and everyone freaks out. Talonvar and the guardsmen are ready to draw their swords, prepared to die to protect the queen. In two quick strides, Gareth Bryan was at the front of the dais between Rand and Margase. Even Gowan put himself in front of Elaine. Margase says that surely he's too young to have earned the heron mark, but Bryan says that the sword fits him. Elida questions Rand and thinks that his answers are a little too convenient. She tells Margase that Rand is dangerous, and Margase asks if this is a foretelling and orders her to speak plainly for once. Elida gives a pretty doom and gloom foretelling, and Rand repeats that he is a shepherd from the Two Rivers. Bryan and Elida both advise Margase that it would be best to lock him up for a while, at least until Elaine and Gowan leave for their lessons in Tarvalon. Margase considers this, but then decides that suspicion is not truth, and justice demands that she let him go. Elida starts to protest, but Margase cuts her off. She asks Rand if he means any harm to her or her family, and Rand swears that he doesn't, so Margase releases him. Gowan and Elaine accompany him to the palace gates, where Elaine flirts a little and tells him that he's handsome before prancing off. After he recovers, he asks Gowan why no one believed he was from the Two Rivers. Gowan says that he's the spitting image of an Ailman. Rand stumbles outside the gate in a daze, thinking about Gowan's words, until he realizes how easy it would be for Elida to find him there, and hurries away.
So one of the things that I caught this time through is that Rand's initial impression of Elaine is that, quote, there was a self-possession about her that made him think of Nynaeve or Maureen. So this means that, at least in Rand's view, Nynaeve has the same level of self-possession and presence as two members of extremely powerful royal families. That's kind of neat, and it says a lot about how much he respects Nynaeve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jordan gets a lot of flack from some people about being overly descriptive of clothing.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes. But I kind of like the details that he puts in here about how Elaine has a fur-lined cloak and her silk clothes are stained from climbing the tree. And then Gowan is wearing clothes no common man would ever wear, and it's even too ornate for a feast day. I don't mind his attention to detail, because in this case, the clothes are part of Rand's logical process in figuring out who these people are and that they're really important.
Right.
And that he stumbled into a place that he really shouldn't be.
Yeah, definitely. So even in this state where he's possibly concussed and probably in big trouble, he's still very much a teenage boy and can't help notice how pretty Elaine is, and then compares her to Egwene.
Yeah.
So, yep, hormones are still intact. Everything's fine.
Yep. What I love about the introduction of Elaine and Gowan is how much comedy is rolled into all of it.
Yeah.
Like, Rand is trying to figure out how much trouble he's in. He has no clue who these people are, and he would climb back out of that wall if he got half a chance, but if not for the concussion, he would be hightailing it out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, okay, the scene is very cute.
Yeah.
But a little too convenient.
Just a bit.
I personally don't think that it makes sense that Elaine has a medical kit that she carries around. Like, she's very compassionate, and we will see that throughout the series. That's part of her character. She's very compassionate. But
We also
okay,
don't see her with a medical kit.
yeah, like, I mean, I don't think taking in strays is not in line with her character, you know? Like, but someone else would care for them, you know? Like, she never has any interest in healing. And she can never heal more than a bruise, even when she's all trained up. So I just don't think that she's treating injured animals with herbs and ointments. Like, that, it just doesn't make sense.
I hear what you're saying there, yeah.
So I don't know if this is one of those first book inconsistencies that Jordan abandons later, like when he started actually developing Elaine's character. But I don't know. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
It's cute. It's a very cute scene. And, you know, it sets up sort of a bond between Elaine and Rand, and that was necessary. But the problem is this version of Elaine is not the Elaine we'll get to know later at all.
I agree. And we may find other examples where this happens with other characters too as we go along, like who we first initially get introduced to them and they slightly alter. And we'll point that out as we go if we find it. But Elaine, I definitely agree with that does happen. We meet a different person here than we're going to see for the rest of the series.
Yeah. And normally that's not that big of a deal, but because she's one of the main characters, it's like, it's just more obvious.
True. And she's very young, so maybe that's, yeah, well, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Gowan.
Ugh.
Much like Matt, he cannot keep his mouth shut. At least here. He just starts talking about his mom and Lenny and Gareth Bryan and the relationship their mom has with the captain of the guard and all kinds of stuff that probably shouldn't be said in front of a stranger.
Yeah, that was awkward. Like, it was very awkward.
And then he even pulls Elaine into making some comments while she's like distracted while fixing Rand up. Like, I get that Jordan needed to do a bit of an info dump here, but this kind of sets the stage for how bad at decision making Gowan is.
Yeah.
And he will be bad at making decisions throughout the rest of the series.
Definitely.
He's terrible. I do not like his character.
Me neither. Obviously. Ugh, no, bad. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, though, like in this scene, starts out decent enough, you know, like we're mostly because we kind of see Gowan and Galad through Elaine's eyes. So for the first couple books, Gowan seems to be the better of the two.
Sure.
But then he just makes the worst decisions.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
And he becomes a very different person.
He really does.
And at least with that, that's not an instance where we meet somebody and then they're completely different later. No, we actually watch him become something else. So,
yeah, absolutely. I love that when Rand figures out that their mother's the queen, he full on freaks out.
yeah.
He's trying desperately to escape, but Gowan and Elaine keep talking to him because he's like a puzzle they can't figure out.
Yeah, huh.
You know, like they won't shut up. So he's thinking that he's going to die or be thrown in prison. And they're like, wait, you're an oddity.
Come here. Let me see. Yeah.
It's funny.
And then we get introduced to Galad.
Right.
And just side note, Galad and Gowan, for some strange reason, when I was first reading, it was just really hard to keep their names separated.
Yeah. A lot of these names are similar. Like, I know we don't pronounce Egwene properly.
Right.
Because Egwene and Elaine are too similar and they spend too much time together.
Yeah.
You know?
Egwene, it makes it a lot easier to like.
Yeah. Egwene, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, the similarity in names, it could have been a little different.
So Galad is actually really frustrating. Like in D&D terms, Galad is lawful good, which in normal speak means that he's a stick in the mud. Like no one likes to be around a person who follows the rules all the time.
Yeah.
However, his integrity really gives him a lot of credibility and leaves him in a place to be trusted by a lot of different kind of people.
Yeah.
It really comes in handy later on. while he's not my favorite character and makes terrible choices throughout the series, he's still a good person to have in your corner if you could put up with him.
Yeah.
He does redeem himself in the end, though.
Yeah, he does. Totally. So we should also probably point out that Galad is Rand's half-brother.
Right.
This could be why the girls are always falling for Rand. If his half-brother is the handsomest man in the history of ever, then Rand must be pretty good looking as well.
Yeah. We're not going to find that out for books, but that is true.
Yeah. So, okay. Rand's mother is Tigraine, who was the daughter of Andor at the time, and his father was an Ale. Galad's mother is also Tigraine, but his father was Taringal,
Yes.
who then later married Morghese after the succession. And then Morghese and Taringal are Elaine and Gawain's parents. So Galad is half-sibling to everyone, but Rand is not related to Elaine or Gawain, which is important.
It's very important. Yes.
Royal families are always kind of twisted and tangled and a little too close for comfort. But at least the way it's laid out, Rand and Elaine are not related by blood.
Yes.
So the whole scene with Elaine climbing trees and tending to Rand like a wounded kitten, and then her petulant hatred of Galad and her teasing with Gawain and saying all the things she shouldn't be saying, just everything reminds me of how young Elaine is.
Yeah.
I don't know how much younger than the others she's supposed to be, but especially early in the series, she seems so young.
She really does.
Like, maybe it's because she's the daughter heir, so she's been sheltered. I don't know, but she comes off as very, very young and immature compared to the other main characters.
I agree. And we'll see that in this chapter later on when she tries to argue with her mother. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just doesn't come off very well.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, do you remember, is she supposed to be a lot younger?
I believe she's supposed to be 2 years younger than Rand. So she's not supposed to be a lot.
2 years younger than Rand?
So
she's supposed to be the same age as
Egwene?
Egwene?
Egwene and Rand, I always thought that Egwene and Rand were the same age, but Elaine was like a couple years younger.
I'm pretty sure that Egwene is a couple years younger than Rand. I'm almost positive we find that in the first or second chapter.
Yeah, that makes Elaine and Egwene the same age.
They don't seem the same age, at least not at first.
Well, Egwene's been studying under Nynaeve to be the future wisdom.
That's true.
And I don't think Nynaeve would brook any
childish nonsense.
Nonsense, yeah.
Yeah, okay, there's that.
She carries a stick. I don't think that's going to happen.
That's funny. Okay.
Rand is not having a good day.
No, he is not.
So just to sum up, falls off the wall, ends up bleeding all over a pretty girl, finds out that he's in the Queen's private garden, and then is held at arrow point by the Queen's guards and escorted under guard to face the Queen herself. And all of this with a mild concussion. The only way that he could top this is if he's thrown up on the Queen's dress.
That would have been funny.
Yeah.
So I love that how when the guards show up, Elaine swears. And Rand thinks, quote, he'd heard that one from one of the stablemen at the Queen's Blessings, and he'd been shocked then. So Elaine has this habit of listening to men swear and then storing them to use later.
Yeah.
But the problem is she doesn't really understand them. So she uses them, but she doesn't know what she's saying.
Yes.
So, like, she doesn't know how bad the swear is.
She, drops an F-bomb and everyone else would be like, not quite
Oh,
that
I think
far
it's
yet.
worse than that.
Yeah.
I think she's saying some really vile stuff. But I don't know. Again, she's very young.
It's also something that I love later on because when Brigitte or Brigitte?
I don't know. I always say Brigitte. I go French with it.
Yeah.
But apparently that is wrong.
Yeah.
I guess we're supposed to go German with it? Or I don't know. I've heard it pronounced in many, many ways. I think it's supposed to be Brigitte, but it's going to be hard to remember that.
Yeah. So when Silverbow shows up, like Elaine is constantly like trying to learn how to swear from her because she's been a soldier
she's rough and tumble.
many different lifetimes, so she knows everything, and she's kind of like put off by I have to explain these to you. But yeah, it's something Elaine has throughout the rest of the series. I find it adorable.
It's super cute. I like it a lot, actually. So we meet Telenvar, and he's another character that I didn't expect to come back, but he did.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen.
Queen Morghese is a force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. I love this whole introduction to the Queen because she's balancing her role as head of state and mother with power and poise and sheer majestic presence. Like, in just a few sentences, we know so much about who she is and the kind of queen she is raising Elaine to be.
Yeah, definitely.
The more I read The Eye of the World, the more I'm starting to realize how much this introduction to Elida makes her sound just like Captain Bornhold of the White Cloaks. I mean, she's a zealot just in her own way.
Yeah, I guess so.
And that's part of the reason she comes back as a horrible character later on.
Yeah. I also like how Morghese totally shuts her down when she's trying to scare Elaine about her training in the White Tower. Like, Morghese isn't going to put up with nonsense.
Right.
And I like that about her.
Elaine strikes out at trying to argue her case with her mom. As the series goes on, she gets much better at navigating situations while still maintaining the upper hand. Mm-hmm. But it comes off as pitifully unskilled here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just feels a little odd for her to be so petulant. When later, she's this badass Aes Sedai queen who leads her country in a war against the Shadow. Mm-hmm. Like, she grows up so much through this entire series.
She really does, definitely.
Elida examines Rand and doesn't believe a word that he says.
No.
Like, and then she just drops the bomb that he has a heron-marked sword, and the whole room goes nuts.
Yeah. Like, it's a literal bomb. Everyone just freaks out.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, we have an assassin here. Gareth Bryan makes this comment that the sword seems to belong to Rand. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering what Jordan was trying to say here, because like Rand has lived with this sword on his hip for a while now, for at least a few weeks, right? So having it on him would be second nature, and it would look like it would belong if he's worn it enough, even if he doesn't know how to use it. But do you think there's something deeper going on with that comment? Like, I want to say there is, but I can't tell what it would be.
Well, we know it's not skill.
Right, it's not skill.
Because Rand is only partially trained. He's getting there, but he has a long way to go. But, okay, so Rand has identified so much of his father with that sword. And he's taken the sword and made it a part of his identity. So the sword belongs to him in the way that Tam belongs to him. Okay. I mean, maybe he has no true right to that blade yet, just like he knows that he isn't Tam's biological son. But he has chosen to see Tam as his father, just like he has taken ownership of this sword. The sword is his, just like Tam is his. And I also think his growing comfort with having the sword and using it is like a symbol of him growing up. He's becoming less and less the farm boy who left the Two Rivers.
That's interesting.
So I feel like when people say that the sword fits him or the sword belongs to him, it's a recognition of him changing and growing and becoming the person he's going to be instead of the boy he used to be.
That's interesting. Okay, cool. I like that explanation.
That's my interpretation of it anyway.
Okay. So, Elida.
Yeah.
Give her all of the facts, and she will always arrange them into the wrong conclusion. Like, this is her fatal flaw.
Yeah, she really does.
Elida's foretelling is straightforward and cryptic all at the same time. Like, things are going to be bad, and Rand is at the center of it, but that can mean so many things that it's kind of useless. Mm-hmm. And I love how Gareth Bryan is basically saying anyone can predict which things are coming with the state of things. So the foretelling isn't much use at all.
Right.
Prophecy is never really useful in the Wheel of Time, except to confirm that something is true.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
I don't understand the motivation for Elida whispering the last part of her foretelling. Like, why wouldn't she want the others to hear that Rand was at the heart of everything? Because then wouldn't that mean that she'd be able to, like, keep Rand, like, locked up or whatever and study him more? Like, I don't understand what's happening here.
Well, my guess, okay, I have no supporting evidence for this, but my guess is that she's trying to keep it quiet. She's trying to, like, not let people know so that she can control the information.
Oh, okay.
Because, she's read Aj, right?
Yeah.
Aja. Sorry, I have to stop saying.
No. Oh, wait. Shoot. Is it Aj or Aja?
Yeah, I always say Aj, but I've been corrected multiple times on that. Anyway.
We're so bad at pronouncing things. Okay, anyway.
She's a red sister, which means if she sees something's going on hanky with the man, she's going to want to be all over it and take control. But she doesn't necessarily want to tip her hand, I think.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Wanting to kind of keep her cards close for the time being.
Right.
Okay.
So I think that's what it's about.
All right. So Morghese says, quote, I have the advantage of Elida and Gareth in having heard Two Rivers' speech when I was young. You have not the look, but if a dim memory can serve me, you have the Two Rivers on your tongue. End quote. Okay, so this has to mean that she met Tam Althor at some point. It's already been established that leaving the Two Rivers was an oddity, so no one ever left. So who else could Morghese have met from the Two Rivers? You know, like, I mean, even if another farmer did leave, what chance would they have come into contact with someone of noble blood? You know, like, even if Morghese wasn't queen yet, she would have been among nobility. But we know that Tam was second captain of the companions in Ilion.
Right.
So he may have come across nobility doing his job. So I think Morghese definitely met Tam Althor at some point.
I can go with that. I mean, obviously she wouldn't remember him to this day. Like,
yeah,
a brief encounter, but she's the kind of person who takes brief encounters of new odd things and stores them away, because as a queen she needs to, like, remember things like that. So
right. But I don't know, like, I just feel like there's really no one else she could have met from the Two Rivers, you know?
Interesting. Okay.
I think it's proof. Maybe. And so then we get Gowan at the end saying, wrap a sheaf around your head, Rand, and you would be the image of an Ailman. Which just backs up what Loyal told Rand a few chapters back. So in case anyone had any doubt, Rand's part ale.
I don't know. There might still be some doubt out there.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well. So Rand makes it out alive.
Woohoo!
And the end cap of this kind of crazy whirlwind adventure is that Rand realizes he better book it out instead of just standing in front of the castle where Elida can find him.
Right.
It makes me laugh every time I read it. And that ends chapters 39 and 40 of The Eye of the World. Join us next week when we discuss chapters 41 and 42, where our main characters will be reunited and new dangers present themselves.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure that you rate and subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Maybe leave us a positive review. It really helps us out. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at podthru@gmail.com. Tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.